giving you a little glimpse into the world of men. A lot of times how two guys will talk is they won't talk. It'll be exactly like this. Two guys can be sitting.
So you're talking like this, but you're not looking at them at all.
Yep. It'll literally be exactly like this.
Well, see, now when you lean forward, it feels less awkward because you feel like you're next to me now. But when you're like sitting back in the chair, then it's like you're behind me and I feel like I'm talking over my shoulder.
So let's talk about Tiki. Hi everyone, this is Ray, or some of you might know me as Tiki with Ray, and today we are in my Tiki bedroom. I like to call it Tiki with Ray's Tiki Hideaway. Jamie came all the way up from Portland, and we're gonna talk about, well, what we like as far as a tiki bar is concerned. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because I've done a lot of travel and I've been to a lot of tiki bars. And for the most part, though, there's a lot of great tiki bars out there.
A lot of them.
And there's a lot of different types of tiki bars. But as time has gone on, and it's one of those things where, like, let me back up a couple seconds. So, like, when I was in the 90s, I was really, really into Volkswagens. Mm-hmm. Volkswagen Beetles. You know, I had one. I had a couple of them, actually. And there used to be car shows. And you can go to these car shows, and then it'd be like, oh my God, look at all these cars. Look at all these Volkswagen Beetles.
They were like Volkswagen-specific car shows? You mean?
Just Volkswagen.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the beginning, you know, I'm like, oh my God, look, I can't believe all these cool cars. And I was just eating it all up. But then as time got on, and I got into Volkswagens and learning about them and learning about the different years, I started to realize that, like, oh, I really like the ones from, like, the 60s. Mm-hmm. I like the more older, classic-looking ones compared to, like, the ones that were in the 70s. And then as you would go to these car shows, you'd have people that would really, really trick out their cars to the point of ridiculousness. To the point where you couldn't
like
even...
hot rod Beetles?
Even that. I mean, just really weird stuff that you could literally not even drive the car. And then as the years went on, I'm like, well, I'm not really into that. I'm not really into anything from the 70s. It got to the point where, like, I only like Beatles from this year to this year.
You refined your opinions.
I became more opinionated, just by knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I've been into tiki now for a little over a decade, and for a while, you know, it's sort of like, oh, a tiki bar, awesome, I'm in. You know, as long as a tiki bar is cool, you know, as long as it's not terrible. I like
my fruity drink. It's a little dark. It's good to go.
Yeah, but as it's going on, and now that I've been to even more tiki bars, I'm starting to realize what my palate is, and what I love, what I really, really love when it comes to tiki bars. I love the old school tiki bars. I really love the survivors. Mm-hmm. I'm going to paint a picture for you. I'm going to paint a scenario because this is literally true. I grew up in the coal region of Pennsylvania, and there was the town that I would live the closest to was a town called Mount Carmel. I mean, it was very, very small, but it had a main street with shops on and stuff like that. And on this street there was a tiki bar. It's called the Beachcomber, of all things.
But not related to...
Nothing related to
Don the Beachcomber.
And like the storefront was like literally like the size of like my bedroom, which means it wasn't very, very big. Mm-hmm. And it had like the facade had no windows. They had a couple tiki masks that were out front. It was like this dark wood on the outside. And I remember always, you know, being with my mom or whatever, driving by and seeing that place, walking by it and being like, I don't know what's going on in there. What's behind the door?
What goes on in there?
What goes on in there? I mean, I know what a bar is, you know, but like obviously that's a bar, but what's that, you know? And it wasn't until actually the early 2000s that I went in, and like it wasn't much of a tiki bar, you know. I mean, I drank Genesee. It was like me and my buddy. We drank beer out of a can, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember it being very, very dark. Dark with red lighting. I think there might have been like a waterfall in the corner. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was like some tiki by it. Maybe literally like 3 locals sitting on that side of the bar. But I remember liking it. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is really, really cool.
Did it line up with any sort of idea that you had about it before going in? Because you had wondered what it was going to be like going in. Did you walk in and you were like, oh, this is, you know, kind of what I pictured? Or was it like, whoa, what is this?
It kind of was what I pictured. I mean, again, this place was not over the top. Mm-hmm. And
you had grown up since you were a kid, so you'd been in a bar.
Yeah. But what I liked was the idea of this bar. The idea of a bar, a tiki bar that's obviously been around forever. Mm-hmm. Kind of like a situation where time forgot.
Yep.
And I'm thinking that this is probably was how the second wave of tiki happened. That you had guys like Otto or Jeff Berry or like Sven being like, let's go check out this stuff.
Walking into a place that just like, probably because nobody had the money to do it, had never been updated. So there it sat.
Yeah.
Gathering dust and serving beer.
Yeah.
And just, it looked the way it looked.
And they probably went into these places and were like, wow, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. That is what I'm realizing. That is the vibe that I'm going for. The leftover tiki bar. Mm-hmm. A bar that's been around forever. Perfect examples right off the bat would be the Alibi.
The Alibi.
The Alibi in Portland, Oregon.
Bar.
One of the oldest tiki bars. 47, right?
1947, yeah. And definitely the oldest in Portland. And continuously operating for many of those years from the same family until fairly recently.
I know the Alibi is your favorite tiki bar. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your love affair with this place.
My love affair with the Alibi.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I mean, I grew up in the Portland area. Their sign is very iconic. Yeah. And, I mean, it's on, an Interstate Avenue. There was a lot of great neon. Before I-5 went in, that was the main thoroughfare in that area. So that was where you had, like, all the motels, all the things that a traveler would need, and lots of great neon. Just like, take any main street in America, whatever the main street was that went through town is going to have some really fantastic neon. Yeah. A lot of it's gone. A lot of it still remains. The Palms Motel, which is right down the street, also some great neon. But the neon on the Alibi, it's, it's up on the ceiling. It's big. You've got, it kind of looks like flamey letters. You got tiki torches, tiki guys, and it was that same sort of thing where, like, I'd grown up, seeing this place. Mm-hmm. I knew it was a bar. My knowledge as a little kid was that bars were where, like, rough people went to get drunk and beat each other up. Like, that's what I knew of a bar.
No windows.
No windows, because you don't want to see the shenanigans that go on inside. But, when I grew up, I got old enough. I went into the Alibi. I don't really even know how old I was the first time I went there. But it was just one of those things. It's just a classic place. You just went there. At the time, I mean, until the, current Tiki revival, it was just the sort of weird, neighborhood bar. It was just a bunch of, like, worker dudes drinking beer after work or whatever. And that's all the bar was for a really, really long time. After Tiki Phase 1 was over, and it just sort of stayed Tiki-fied for lack of probably money to, make it anything else. Nobody bothered to change things.
It would literally just be easier to just keep everything hanging up than it would be to take it down.
Exactly. It was like, it would take money, effort, all these things that as a bar owner you wouldn't have necessarily. And so just, it just stayed. So it was like this little time capsule sort of place. but I think, like, you know, going back to what you were saying before, that's, I think, what attracted me to it. Like, going in there and thinking, like, whoa, what, this is, you know, what happened or didn't happen here. You know, and with...
What happened or didn't happen?
Yeah, what didn't happen is nobody cleaned it, nobody fixed it up. Like, you know, the bathrooms, like, at some point in the 70s disco era, the bathroom was clearly redone because you have, like, smoke mirror with the gold veining on all of the walls. So I don't know about the men's room, but in the ladies' room, you get a full view of yourself going to the bathroom. But in, you know, it's smoke and mirrors. But, you know, it's like that got redone at some point. But to this day, it hasn't been redone. And that's one of the things that I love about it.
Yeah.
When it sold a couple of years ago, my biggest fear was that, oh no, they're going to clean it up. And the drinks, I'll say, their tiki drinks at the time were pretty heavy on, like, fruity mixers and sugar. Yeah. They weren't great. So, you know, getting a beer there was actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
But my biggest fear when it sold recently was that they were going to fix it up. Mm-hmm. That I knew that the plan was to keep it a tiki bar because that was one of the things. The people who bought it have actually, you know, they're Portland people, so they appreciated that it's this Portland icon. Yeah. But I was still afraid, like, well, what if they make the bathroom nice? That'll kind of make me sad because I like knowing that, like, lots of people have, I don't know, probably done drugs and had sex in there because that's what you do in the bathroom of, like, a shitty old bar, which is what it was for so long. And, you know, it's clean enough to use, but, like, it still has that layer of, like, history and the sort of existential grime that goes with that. And that's what I love about it, is it feels so real. Yeah. It's not trying to be anything other than what it is. And I mean, that's kind of a vibe that I appreciate in everything, like restaurants, houses, clothes. Like, I just like things to be real, whatever that is, you know, like the warts and all kind of realness.
I realize that I like to say it's like old shit.
Yeah.
And that includes places. Mm-hmm. There's something about going to a bar, a restaurant, where you know that it's been around forever. It kind of reminds me of the difference between, like, retro or true vintage things.
Yes, exactly. And those things are not the same. They're not the same. Those things get confused a lot.
You deal with these kind of items, so please tell the audience what's the difference between retro and vintage.
Vocabulary lesson. Yeah. Vintage means that something is 25 years old or older. So right now, vintage for me feels really modern, because we're old. Yeah. But yeah, if something is 25 years or older, it is vintage. If something is, like, depending on who you're talking to, 50 or 100 years old, then it's antique. Retro is actually something new that is made to look like something that is from a long time ago. Yeah. So when people go to a vintage store and they're like, I love your retro clothes. No, these are not retro. These are vintage. If I buy a dress from, like, a modern retailer of vintage looking dresses, that dress is not vintage, it's retro. Mm-hmm.
What would you consider to be a retro tiki bar?
So I think a good example is Frankie's in Las Vegas.
Frankie's Tiki Room, yeah.
Because it's only been open for, like, 10 years, but when you walk in those doors, you would swear on the grave of someone you loved that place had been there forever, for 60 years.
Yeah, and that's when I first went to Frankie's, I assumed that.
I think everybody who walks in the door, I'm like,
oh wow, this is an old school tiki bar. Yep. This has been around forever. And then, like, I bought you could buy a book there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it opened up in, like, 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, it was like, I'm like, 08, 09. Yeah, it's like 10 years old right now. It's crazy because, and there are plenty of tiki bars that, you know, between the two of us that we've been to that have opened up, you know, anywhere in the last 10 years. I can't think of another one that has opened up in a more modern time that has such an old school feel to it.
Have you been to Forbidden Island in Alameda?
No, I have not been there.
Forbidden Island is almost there. And I think what gives Frankie's the edge above it is that Frankie's is just so dark and they allow smoking.
Yes.
So there's the smell of smoke. But Forbidden Island opened up in 2006, I think. Martin Kate was one of the original owners. Him and Michael Thanos and Michael's brother. The room is exactly the same as Frankie's. Same, like whoever designed it, like it's the same long bar. There's the booths in the side. That would be like a retro tiki bar.
Yeah, because if it feels old and authentic, well, so let's take it back to an Alibi for a minute.
Okay.
Just a couple of months ago, they redid that whole space to, kind of coordinate more with the rest of the bar, but also put in a second bar up there.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
And it's amazing because, like, when I first went up there, I just remember that feeling of, like, because I knew that they were opening it. I was like, oh, it's probably, lovely. But I was floored. It looked and felt as if that whole area had also been sitting in just that way since 1947 or whatever. Like, yeah. It has that, like, like I said, that existential grime of history, even though it was a new build. If
something's going to be retro, what do you got to do?
I think a lot of it comes down to, kind of like you said with Frankie's, the darkness. In the dark wood, because there's something about, like, this dark glossy wood.
I'm realizing that
it feels. Yeah. I think because it almost feels like it has that, like, not the existential grime of history, but actual, like, millions of hands have touched this, kind of, because it's dark. It feels like it's been stained. But also, I think, like,
dark wood,
red lighting, the red vinyl booths, because it's not something that you find in most modern build-outs.
You're essentially, you're kind of describing Tonga Hut, North Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Dark wood. The first thing I noticed about the Tonga Hut up there was the dark wood. And that bar is dark. Mm-hmm. The facade looks old. I've done a lot of thinking about it. There's always the question of, like, what's your favorite tiki bar? My favorite tiki bar is Tiki Tea. Mm-hmm. And I had to,
it's tiny. It's the size of a closet.
And I had to think about it for a while because there's what I call a perfect tiki bar. A perfect tiki bar has all the elements in place. Mm-hmm. The decor, drinks, music, full environment. You walk through the door, you're in a different reality.
You're transported to a different place.
And there are places that do that well, like the Shameful Tiki Room, Hale Pele, like any of the like Smuggler's Cove, Pagan Idol.
Sam's.
I can go down the line. But I love Tiki Tea, and I've always loved Tiki Tea. But even at the very, very beginning, I remember thinking, like, okay, I love the drinks. But the bar itself is Tiki. Mm-hmm. But I remember, like, the seating was, like, metal chairs. I'm like, well, that's not very Tiki. And then, like, they'd always have, like, the door open. And music...
you can't let the light in.
And the music was always... was inconsequential. Mm-hmm. And forever I've always been like, well, it's like, well, I love this place, I really do, but it's not a perfect tiki bar.
Yeah, it's not tiki enough.
But as time has gone on, I think that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, I think it's that dose of it's real.
It's real. It's been around since the 60s.
It's not it's the magazine photo finish version of tiki, and then there's the real deal.
There's the idea about the real deal. The it's a survivor, and talk about surviving. Mm-hmm. You'll be sitting at a table, and, like, right there is Mike Sr. I mean, you want to talk about, like, the living legends of tiki. There he is.
Actual fixture, yeah.
And I honestly, and it really feels to me like. It feels like when you're there, like, that's ground zero for tiki. And what I'm realizing, and this is what it all comes down to for me, is I love tiki bars because I love the escapism. Mm-hmm. But part of the escapism isn't necessarily pretending that I'm on a beach in a tropical island. Some of it has to be a time machine. Mm-hmm. Some of it has to be transportive to be like, okay, I feel like I am drinking in a bar and it's like the mid 60s. There needs to be that element.
So like you're transporting to a different time, not necessarily a different place.
Yes.
I agree with that assessment. That's
what I'm going for.
Kind of how I live too. Where it's, it's like I want to, be in this time period, which I didn't actually live in. But I like that sense of having a little time machine and hopping into this place that is very different than the place that,
and believe me,
life.
And believe me, Jamie, I mean, I'll be the first to say, they always bring up that thing of like, do you feel like you were born in the wrong decade? No, I don't.
No,
and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't want to be living in the 50s or the 60s, but to quote...
Me either. I would have like...
You'd be having
no rights.
And you'd have to wear a girdle and stuff like that. But
I couldn't go to a place like the Alibi on my own.
No, probably not. But to quote the mighty Charles Phoenix, I don't want to go back in time. I just want to be able to touch it. So, you ready to do this?
I'm ready to do this. I think this sweater was the right choice with your shirt.
Perfect.
It's like... good color coordination.
It's good to see you dressed up for. What's the name of the polo? The Laco set or whatever.
Lacoste. It's I'm into prepcore.
Prepcore.
Yeah, it's like hardcore but preppy.
Should I put my Fred Meyer?
I just said your Fred Meyer polo shirt from your side job.
Guys, I got this really cool Fred Meyer polo shirt. What? What word's not right? Just said Fred Meyer.
That was funny. That was good.
Hey gang, this is Tiki with Ray, and I just want to say thank you very much for checking out my video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see more episodes, click on the subscribe button. And if you liked the video, give it a like. That would mean a lot to me. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave a comment in the comment section below.